This is the final word. India, England daily regarding the second one-day international from Pune. Adam Collins is going to tell you all about it in 30 seconds.
I am. Geoff, India played to their plan in making 336 after being sent in. 112 runs in the first half and doubled at 224 in the second. A century to Rahul. Some magnificent hitting from Rishabh, Pant and Pandya. But it wasn't enough because England played their game plan. They went hard from the start. A big opening stand from Roy and Bairstow. Bairstow makes a century. Stokes an extraordinary 99 from 52 balls. And they get there with 39 balls to spare.
30 seconds, I reckon. That's what it felt like in my bones. As far as ticking over numbers as well, our channel today went past 1 million views, so thank you to everybody who has been part of that million. 15,000 subscribers as well, so jump on if you're so inclined. It's been a fun time on the channel. But as far as India and England went, 1-1 now in the series. It was neck and neck all through the T20 series, and we're going to have a decider in the 3-match one-day series as well, so nothing leaving us unsatisfied as far as results go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not everything and it's not nothing that the number one spot in the ICC rankings is more or less up for grabs. England have held that crown, I suppose, wore that crown since 2018, a year before they won the World Cup. And it means an awful lot to Eoin Morgan and his group. So being able to stay number one matters to them. India have the chance to essentially overtake them. Obviously, they've just lost a game of cricket. That'll be the main focus of our conversation today. But yeah, it's good that we go into the final game of the final of 3 formats, the last day of the tour, with a trophy to play for.
Yeah, it was interesting the way things started off. Shikhar Dhawan, after almost getting a century in the previous match, went early. Rohit Sharma made a few, as he did last time, and didn't go on with it. And then that excellent partnership between Virat Kohli and Rahul. This interesting contradiction with Kohli, where he's made a half-century in each of his last 4 innings in ODI cricket. He's made 5 50s in his last 6 innings for India. So he's batting really well, but he still can't get that 100. And then Rahul, who did come good with a century after having such a lean run through the T20s, opening the batting, but down in the middle order in the one-day team has given him a bit more time to build.
Yeah, it's hard to criticise Kohli, and I won't. I mean, he is playing to the plan that India have prescribed. Now, you can criticise that plan. You can say that on flat tracks, as it was at Pune yesterday, that you should be going harder in the power play and through the middle overs, more along the lines of what England have been doing from the last couple of years. But if that's their strategy, and it has been an experienced, battle-hardened team, they all know their roles, and Kohli's role, like sort of that box-to-box midfielder between the first power play and the second power play, is to do precisely what he did yesterday. And I mean, yes, he eventually gets out. Adil Rashid gets him once again. Unlucky not to get him earlier, if not for the gloves of Josh Buttler, who was standing in as captain for Eoin Morgan and had a bit of a dirty day with the gloves and made a second ball duck, I think it was, later on. But nevertheless, leading the team, that'll be the main focus of his day. But yeah, so Kohli not making centuries, but making a contribution. The player who might be more disappointed, really, was Rohit Sharma. At the back end of that power play, he looked dangerous. I think he struck 3 boundaries in and over, and the next over, Sam Curran, I mean, the most innocuous delivery outside the leg stump, and he parries it round the corner to the man on the 45, Adil Rashid. So in terms of going really big and exploding out of the power play, I think a lot of that hinged on the fact that they lost Rohit Sharma at an important time.
It's going to be interesting to see how things work for Rahul going back into the IPL as well, because he's been doing this job as an opener in the T20 side, then this brief sojourn down the order where he does have that bit more time, and then going back through the IPL, which I'll be keeping an eye on what you're doing through the IPL as well, because I notice you've got rid of the beard in celebration of the 1 million views. I assume you cut it off and did a lap around the block. We're still working out what we'll be doing during the IPL, but it could be a change of roles for everybody.
Yeah, well, put it this way. If you like the non-bearded look, let us know in the comments. If I should grow it back, certainly my partner wants me to grow it back. My baby doesn't know what's happened. She can't. She thinks that there's a different man in the house now. Let us know that as well. Yeah, Rahul, who's prolific at IPL level. And look, he's a class player. It was a matter of time before he came good again, and it would have been a difficult experience being left out of that deciding T20 this time last week. So, yeah, back to form. He batted well the other day, by the way. I know it took a little while to get going in the first one day, but alongside Pandya, they piled on in excess of 100 runs in the final 10 overs, and this time the role was different, coming in earlier. batting through the middle overs and getting to a century. And look, it obviously meant an awful lot to him after that experience last week where he did have that run of form. And like any professional cricketer, you start making a string of low scores and you start to question yourself. Look, maybe I won't get back to those heights. But thankfully for KL Rahul, he's already back at the top of his game.
Rishabh Pant had some fun, 77 from 40 balls. Hardik Pandya, 35 from 16. There was a period there with Pant, KL Rahul and Pandya where they hit 9 sixes in 7 overs. Pandya hit one first ball as he came in, and then Krunal Pandya came in right at the end and hit a couple of boundaries, batting alongside his brother as well. So the closing flurry really worked a treat.
Yeah, it did. And look, Rishabh Pant, the fact that he's only played, I think he's played like 18 one-day internationals before yesterday and only passed 51, something like that. But someone as talented as this man, in 2021, across the formats, it was a matter of time before he came back into the 50-over team. Yes, it was via injury with Shreyas Iyer so badly hurting his shoulder in the first game. But, I mean, Rishabh Pant, 77 from 40 balls. The benefit of laying a base, in theory, is that you liberate a player like Rishabh, a player like Hardik Pandya, who struck 35 in 16 balls, to go hog wild in the final 10 overs. And Geoff, it's not the first time we've made the comparison to Adam Gilchrist with Rishabh. We were saying it during the Test series. Well, the way that this guy can change a game, it's impossible not to arrive at the same conclusion. On 2 occasions, he struck sixes with one hand off the bat. A couple of times, sixes down the ground with his back pad kissing the turf. That is freakish. That is ridiculous. And the fact that this guy is now back in the one-day team, dominating Test cricket, had a good T20 series in the best form of his life right now, it means that I'm sure that no Indian 11 will take the field without Rishabh Pant in it for a long time into the future.
Tom Curran had an interesting day, ended up with 2 for 83 from his 10 overs after going for none for 19 from his first 5. And a bowler we keep a close eye on is Reece Topley, because he's been such an exciting prospect but missed out through injury for so long. He played a single ODI 1 year or just about a year ago for England, and before that his previous match for England was in 2016, but he's finally back in the side. He was shaping the ball, swinging it around. He bowled 2 of the last 3 overs and conceded 13 runs from those 2, so he did really well at reining it in at a time when India were going hell for leather at the end.
Yeah, and I guess the misunderstood bit about Topley is that his game was reborn through 20-over cricket, so we shouldn't be surprised that in overs 48 and 50, he has a deep bag of tricks to draw from. Lots of different change-ups and slower balls. He's very accurate. So after hooping the new ball around and finding the edge of Shikhar Dhawan, which, by the way, was an excellent bit of bowling, he set him up. 3 balls in that over, moved away. Then he brought one back. Then the last ball moved away, kissed the edge, and Ben Stokes took it really nicely at second slip. But Topley's a class act, and I can see why they wanted to get him a game on this tour. Tall and awkward, nowhere near as quick as Wood or Archer, but a player who they are going to be investing in 20-over cricket and 50-over cricket over the next couple of years, I'm absolutely certain. I felt terribly for Tom Curran because he didn't do anything wrong in his first spell, none for 19, and then he just ran straight into Hardik Pandya and straight into Rishabh Pant when they were smacking 126 runs in the final 10 overs. It was the perfect execution of that Indian plan. As I said in the summary, they struck 112 runs in the first 25 and 224, exactly double in the second 25. So the old adage of doubling your score at 30, well, that's long gone now. I think India doubled their score from like over 37 or something like that yesterday. But it was kind of more that 2015 MO, which won a lot of teams' games in that tournament. I suppose the debate is, has the game moved on? Do you need to be able to go harder off the top, which hasn't necessarily been the way that India have done it? That's I guess a more strategic, structural debate that they need to have as they work towards the next 50-over World Cup in 2 years' time.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when you're talking about going hard from the start, it's not like England went from ball 1. Bhuvneshwar Kumar bowled really nicely off the top. We didn't really mention him in the previous game either, which a lot of people pulled us up for.
Yes.
He bowled so nicely in the first one-day international, and fair enough if you told us off. There was a fair bit to cover in that game. But Prasidh Krishna bowled well with him. They only conceded 10 off the first 4 overs. Roy and Bairstow took their time. And even up until the point that Jonny Bairstow was at about 90, he was still going at had a run a ball, not really faster than that. And Ben Stokes was going much the same with Bairstow at that stage. So it wasn't like they went hell for leather until they reached about the 30th over. So Roy and Bairstow took their time initially and then started attacking. Once they felt that they'd got themselves set, it was Jason Roy doing a bit more of the attacking. He nearly got out in the 40s again. It would have been, 4 innings out of 5. Nearly got caught at long on, but just got enough on it. Got just past his 50 and then got out in the 50s instead of the 40s for a change of scene.
Yeah, it was a slightly more nuanced 100-run stand from Bairstow and Roy, as you say. Like, they took their time to settle, and then they totally exploded. Roy initially and Bairstow later. Roy's first half-century since the World Cup semi-final of 2019, remarkably. But still, as you say, consistently making runs on this tour, mostly getting out in the 40s, but got out just after 50. A brilliant bit of fielding from Rohit Sharma to break up that stand. Just looking at that union between Bairstow and Roy, they've added in excess of 100 13 times in 43 partnerships at the top of the list for England. That is ridiculous. Wow. Before the two of them, the most 100-run stands for a pairing for England was 3, and that was Alex Hales and Jason Roy. So you're getting a sense, I suppose, for just how dominant that pairing can be. All the CricViz data points to them being the most dominant in the history of one-day international cricket in terms of the run rate they go at and the average they go at. They go at over 7 and over and average more than 60 when batting together as openers. So quite extraordinary there. Jonny Bairstow moves to his 11th one-day 100. It's remarkable to think that you go back to 2017. Only 4 years ago, he wasn't a lock in this 50-over team. But, 11 centuries now in this format of the game, averaging 80 over his last 8 games, where he struck 3 centuries along the way. I mean, despite what happened to Bairstow in the Test side of the tour, he's totally excelled at one-day level, as he always does. And then he was joined by Ben Stokes and Geoff. That was just wild. That's when they moved into that next gear. They needed to go at about 7.5 and over from that point. And Stokes got his first 50 from 40 balls and his next 49 from 12 deliveries. It's almost worth going through it. I took down the note before he went, and I'll read it out in ball sequence. 6, 6, 6, 1, 6, 4, 6, 6, 2, 4, and then caught off the glove down the leg side by Rishabh Pant to go 1 run short of a century. But it was without a doubt the most influential contribution of the match.
In terms of changing a game, you can't do much more than that. Off the top of my head, I reckon that out of those 11 centuries for Bairstow, I think probably 8 of them have been made when starting in a partnership with Jason Roy. So something about that partnership really helps bring out the best in Bairstow as well. And then, Stokes, who we've talked about as being a player who doesn't necessarily have the scope to go from his first delivery, but he did have that bit of time. He was, 34 off 39, I think, and then started to get things going. Kuldeep Yadav came in for a fair bit of treatment as well, and that largely set them up. I wanted to ask you about Kuldeep Yadav because he got hit for 8 sixes last night out of his none for 84. He hasn't taken a wicket in either of the one-dayers so far. He barely got to bowl in the one test match that he played at Chennai in the recent series. Before that, he played 1 ODI in Australia. He played 1 ODI when India toured New Zealand. The last time he was really a regular part of the side was more than a year ago, January 2020, when Australia visited for some one-day matches. And the last time he played a test was a year before that, January 2019. Now, he's been a wonderful bowler at times. We've both loved watching him bowl, but I don't know whether it's just a matter of confidence being hit because he's been out of the side so much and watching from the sidelines. But I don't know. What's your take on Kuldeep, and is he going to make it back to being a force to be reckoned with? Because at the moment he looks very vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a mid-career crisis, but the way you build the argument there, maybe it is. And nights like that don't help the situation because there is a deeper bank of spinners that India can draw from now. Yes, no left-arm wrist-spinning option that's quite as experienced as him, but the spinners last night, the 2 left-armers, went for none for 156 collectively from 16 overs, and that is stark and it stands out. I mean, I suppose part of it is matchups, bowling to Ben Stokes and Jonny Bairstow going the way that they are. You're up against it, so it's not necessarily fair to judge what he was doing when it comes down to some individual brilliance with the blade, but nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see whether they stick fat and play him in the decider or whether they decide to change it up. I mean, even a bowler like Ashwin, who hasn't been used in 50-over cricket for a while, I saw he was watching the game last night and tweeting about it. I wonder whether there is a temptation to consider bringing him back into the 50-over format of the game. I get that they moved past him and he's become somewhat of a test specialist, but it's not as though Ashwin doesn't play white ball cricket. I mean, we're going to see him in the Indian Premier League in just a few weeks' time, so that might also make things tough for Kuldeep, being another experienced spinner. But it is a bit disappointing because, I mean, we've backed him in heavily on this show. We've loved him. From the moment he took the field against Australia in that test match at Dharamshala in 2017, he's been a strong focus of ours, and he bowled so nicely in Australia in 2018-19 from limited opportunities. And I think that might be part of it as well. He seems to get into the team with limited opportunity. He's coming in for a game here, a game there, which we know how that can knock a spinner's confidence. So, yeah, it's a bit of a watch this space, but he's such a capable, such a talented guy. I think this might be a really important IPL for him coming up.
So there was that little twist towards the end where Ben Stokes gets out gloving, as you said, then the double wicket maiden from Prasidh Krishna, who gets Bairstow, and then goes through Joss Buttler as well. And suddenly you have a sequence where you've gone 91 runs for no wickets in 31 balls, followed by 3 wickets for 2 runs in 9 deliveries. And you thought, hang on, could England possibly fall over? Like, could they lose this?
Yeah. Well, it had the feelings, didn't it? It felt like big twist. I mean, England only needed 50 from 13 overs at that point. But, I mean, Prasidh, a superb over, double wicket maiden, after losing Stokes in the previous set. It did feel like that might be on. And that's why it's to the immense credit that Liam Livingstone on debut was able to close it out alongside Dawood Malan. I mean, you go from two such experienced campaigners in Bairstow and Stokes, and then Malan's played one-day international, surprisingly. A lot of people would argue that it's his best format in domestic cricket, but only had one opportunity before to play 50-over cricket for England. And then Livingstone, who only played international cricket twice in 2017 in T20 format and didn't go well. So, you know, some pressure on his shoulders to make a contribution there. And did he ever, smacking Buvy for 2 sixes in and over to make absolutely sure of it. And they steered the ship nicely home with, as I say, 39 balls to spare. So, I mean, given that Sam Billings will probably come back into the team, Owen Morgan will not. That means that I suppose it was a bit of a shootout between Malan and Livingstone as to who will keep their spot. And Liam Livingstone, 2 fantastic seasons with the Perth Scorchers in the Big Bash League. As I mentioned, he has had experience with England before. We've seen how good he can be in the T20 blast over here. It feels like he picked a very, very good time to show a steady and cool head in the final stages of that chase.
Can hit a 6, and if you want someone coming towards the back end of an innings, that's what you want. So in terms of player of the day, Bairstow would have a strong claim, but Ben Stokes, with the explosiveness of the way he hit the ball, would trump that claim, you reckon?
Yep, Stokes for mine. Bairstow, brilliant. No doubt what Stokes does isn't possible without what Bairstow and Roy do. But, I mean, if you're looking for England's long-term number 3, and there's no consensus around this, be it in 20 or 50 over cricket, there's no clear steer on who's going to play that role into the future, why wouldn't it be Ben Stokes? It makes a lot of sense. He's never batted better, and nights like last night highlight that point.
And the Hall of Fame, my nomination would have to be the 2 one-handed sixes that Rishabh Pant hit. And it wasn't, one-handed 6 over the leg side where the bottom hand holds on to the bat. They were one-handed sixes down the ground and then over the offside with the top hand holding onto the bat, just to increase the degree of difficulty.
How about the one over backward point off the front foot after charging, one hand off the bat, and it wasn't like his bottom hand was anywhere near it. The hand came off the bat like half a second before. It was an extraordinary bit of adaptation, I suppose, in the crease. The guy's a freak and I love him. My Hall of Fame nomination, though, has to be KL Rahul, on account of something that Dinesh Karthik brought to our attention on the Sky cricket coverage over here. Dinesh Karthik's been a revelation on commentary, I should say. He told us that KL Rahul in the dressing room asks his teammates to address him not as KL Rahul, but King Legend Rahul. KL, King Legend. To have that kind of bravado and that kind of self-assuredness and that kind of confidence, that is my Hall of Fame. And when you can back it up like he did yesterday, making another international century, well, fair play. Got to love it.
It's dangerous work asking people to come up with different acronyms, different things that your initials could stand for, because there are all kinds of places you might wind up that you don't want to. That's enough for us today. We've wound up at the end of the show. The final word, India, England Daily. Thanks for watching. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/thefinalword, and you can find our audio podcasts on podcast feeds as well. Check out the Harsha Bogle interview that went up a couple of days ago as well. Lots of people enjoying that. Geoff Lemon and Adam Collins, we'll see you for Game 3.
Bye.